What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Wednesday Football Talk Show here with Ben Hall and my guy Trey Watson. Here in today's show, we're just going to be discussing a little bit of the playoffs and our expectations for the conference championships on Sunday. So before we get started, how you doing today, Trey?
Doing good, man. Like you said, playoffs are winding down. Got some big matchups coming up. Had some great games last week, and a lot of stuff going on in the playoffs. Even with only a couple games going on.
So our first game, the Packers versus the Rams. This was an expected outcome the way it ended. I think a lot of people expected the Packers to win this game, but my biggest takeaway from this game was if the Rams defense can't stop the Packers, then I don't think there's any defense left in the playoffs that will be able to stop them. The Bucks running defense is probably the best in the NFL, so that'll be a pretty good matchup next week. But the Packers offense really, Rodgers and those guys really did what they wanted against the Rams. They were playing against a banged up Aaron Donald, but they did a really good job blocking him. I don't know if that was because of his injury or what. But he really didn't do too much in that game. And the Rams offense didn't do much either. But we know with Rams games, for the Rams to win the game, they depend on their defense. And if the defense gives up 32 points, and it's going to be tough for them to win the game. So, like I said, Aaron Rodgers had a day, threw for 296 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they got Aaron Jones involved a little bit more. He had 14 carries for 99 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Adams had 9 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. So those 3 guys really stood out. I think Lazard led the team in receiving yards. So the Packers really did what they wanted. And for the Rams, Cam Akers rushed 18 times for 90 yards and a touchdown. And that was really the only sign of life for them on offense, especially with Cooper Kupp out. So like I said before, it was an expected outcome, but it was still good to see the Packers, picking up right where they left off.
Yeah, man. I think the Packers have been firing on all cylinders for a while now, and they just continued that. Aaron Donald not being at full strength, it showed, and not that their whole defense is Aaron Donald. They got a lot of talent, but he's best defensive player overall in the league right now. Arguably the best player, period. And he just wasn't himself, wasn't able to impact the game the way he normally does. And the Packers just executed well. I don't think they had any one-on-one matchup that, was just crazy exploited. I don't think Devontae Adams did a ton against Ramsey. He had the nice slant catch. And the touchdown, it looked like they were playing some kind of bracket goal line man coverage, which means he should have had outside help, which is probably why he was yelling at everyone on the little replay. But the Packers just took advantage. They did what they needed to do. They made all the plays they needed to make. Like you said, got Aaron Jones involved, and he'll be a big key, going into next week. Just trying to get him going and keep him going because he's so useful both in the run and the pass game. That he can just make it even more wide open for Aaron Rodgers and help their offense flow even better.
So our second game on Saturday, the Ravens versus Bills. This was a tough one for the Ravens. Lamar threw for 162 yards and an interception, and the interception was basically the one that sealed the victory for the Bills. But there's a lot to take away from this game if you're a Ravens fan. The Bills on offense really didn't do that well. Stephon Diggs had a day like usual. He had 8 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown. Josh Allen only threw 4 incompletions. I think he was 23 for 27 for 206 yards and a touchdown, which isn't like incredible. 206 yards isn't too much. And the Ravens defense really did what they needed to win that game. They only allowed 10 points, but the pick 6 was another 7. So they lost 17-3. But if you score 3 points, you're just not going to win any NFL game. A team rarely ever gets shut out. But the Ravens had a ton of opportunities. They missed 2 field goals, but as did the Bills. So the field goals, you really can't complain about too much. But it kind of seemed like the Ravens just couldn't capitalize when they would get possessions inside the red zone and stuff like that. They drove a ton and would get down the field, and then at the end, the drive would just stop, and it would end up either with a punt or a field goal that was missed. And then before the half, they tied it at 3. But the second half, the Bills definitely came out and played like the better team. I know a lot of Ravens fans are asking for Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, to be gone, and I definitely am one of those. Harbaugh said in his press conference today that Greg Roman will be coming back, but just watching film and everything that the Ravens, the routes that they had the receivers running, the passing plays, it just doesn't look very good. And I just feel like Roman, isn't really setting Lamar Jackson up to win the game in the passing game. A lot of people come out and just say the dumb stuff with Lamar can't throw and stuff, but I'll tell you, it's not Lamar. It definitely isn't. And I'm excited to see what the Ravens go out and do in free agency, because if they're bringing everybody back, they need to add a top weapon to put next to Hollywood Brown, because he's really the only other wide receiver that they really use. So we'll see what the Ravens do in the offseason, but this was definitely a tough loss for them. And the Bills are really hot right now and will definitely give the Chiefs a big game on Sunday.
Yeah, man, I think that game just showed that the Ravens, as good as they played, once Lamar came back from COVID, they were still missing some pieces. The defense did play really well. They gave up a little bit, but what was it? Just the one touchdown. You kind of expect, your team to be in those games, and the Ravens offense just wasn't doing enough. They were a number one wide receiver away from being, a really complete offense. I saw someone on Twitter say, I don't know what people expect Lamar Jackson to take, Miles Boykin and Willie Snead to a Super Bowl. That's just really hard to do. No offense to those guys, and not even Hollywood Brown, but none of them are number one receiver, like a Stephon Diggs type. You're giving, 10 to 12 targets a game and expecting them to open up passing lanes for other guys like Willie Snead, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews. You just need that guy, that guy who requires that much attention, and they didn't have it. Lamar forced the throw and had his first ever red zone interception, which, it turned out to be the difference in the game. And that hurts. Obviously, you never expect Justin Tucker to miss field goals, but they were talking all day about how crazy the Buffalo weather was. And you saw the look on his face. He felt like he had good kicks, and it just didn't happen, which, is why you can't rely on kicking to win football games. At the end of the day, he's the most accurate kicker ever, but that stuff happens. Wind is part of football. And, if you're scoring touchdowns, you're not necessarily worried about it as much. But that just was what it was, man. The Ravens need to upgrade there. They've got a really solid running game. They've got some young, talented offensive linemen. They'll get Ronnie Stanley back next year, hopefully, and they have two really good tackles, a young center, and they can probably build another old lineman. But I definitely think their number one priority is getting a true number one wide receiver, and they'll be back competing in the Super Bowl conversation pretty soon.
And to your point with that, with Kyler Murray, they got him DeAndre Hopkins, and earlier in the year we saw what effect that had. With Josh Allen, they got him Stephon Diggs, and we're still seeing what effect that's had. So, a lot of quarterbacks that, have had some small struggles in the passing game, we see what steps they take when you add a number one receiver with that kind of caliber. So the Ravens really should just take notes for what it did for those quarterbacks and look forward in trying to help push Lamar. But for our next game, the Chiefs versus Browns, this was a really close game, but let's be real. If Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have gotten hurt, I don't think anybody would have really been that interested in the outcome, because the way the game was going with Patrick Mahomes in the game, the Chiefs were winning and had the game in their hands. But it was crazy to see the Browns come back. Like I said, when you take the top quarterback in the NFL out of the game, it's definitely going to make a game closer. But the Browns were really a few plays away from taking the lead and maybe even winning the game, and that would have been the storyline of the entire playoffs. But even with Mahomes going down, both Kelsey and Hill stepped up. On the day, they both had 8 catches, one for 109 and the other for 110, and Kelsey had a touchdown. But I don't know. The Browns are definitely going to be really, really good in the future. They got a lot of young pieces, and they got a pretty good coach from what I've seen so far. So I think the Browns in the future could be really good, but I wasn't quite sure why they didn't give Kareem Hunt the ball as much. He had 1 touchdown, but he only had 6 carries. And when you have a guy like Nick Chubb, I understand that the other guys' carries are going to be limited, but Kareem Hunt's been playing good all year. And I think they need to use both of those guys more. They throw the ball with Baker a ton, and I don't really understand it as much, but that's just the way they play. But for the Chiefs, Le'Veon Bell, I'm not sure what was going on. I don't know if he was hurt or they just weren't using him as much, but it really seemed like they didn't have him, in the game plan at all. And with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out, Williams had to step up, which he did. And that was really the difference. Without Le'Veon Bell, who, when they signed, everybody thought was going to be a huge addition to this team. In their first playoff game, they don't even use him. So it was a little bit of a surprise. But for the Chiefs, as long as Patrick Mahomes comes back, they are still my favorite to win the Super Bowl. But that game against the Bills on Sunday will be very exciting.
Yeah, man, I think, from this game, it just really validated that the Browns are a much improved and different team than they've been for a really long time. Like you said, they've got a good coach, and they've got a lot of young talent. People were talking about, maybe Odell being out, helped Baker Mayfield. Maybe they're better without Odell. I wouldn't at all say that they're better without Odell. And also, it's weird that people said that he was forcing the ball to him too, which because I didn't see that when he was playing. I didn't see it last year. I didn't see it this year. I saw just Baker not playing well. So maybe, having less weapons or unproven weapons helped Baker develop, maybe helped his decision making. But they have talent. I mean, Jarvis Landry is a Pro Bowl receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones looked like a big time playmaker and made a lot of plays the second half of the season. And Rashard Higgins made a bunch of plays, obviously the unfortunate fumble into the end zone for the touchback, but they've got talent on both sides of the ball and are going to keep building it. But at the end of the day, yeah, if Mahomes doesn't go out, I think that's a much more easy win. Also, if Henne doesn't throw the random interception in the end zone that made zero sense. But, he made up for it, made a play at the end. Coach trusted him, on 4th and 1 in a situation where no one really expected them to go for it. And they're back where they need to be. Their team is what their team is, a bunch of really talented playmakers on offense and a defense that does just enough to not have to worry about anything when you have an offense like that. Like you said, the Bills-Chiefs game is going to be interesting regardless. But I think Mahomes will be fine and it'll be a great game.
So now moving on to the next game, our final playoff game, the Bucs versus Saints. This was a great game to watch. And, the Bucs won by 10, but if you watch the game, they made the field goal with like 9 or 10 minutes left to go in the game. So it was a close game throughout the whole time, but Breeze really threw 3 costly interceptions. The one in the first half ended up with 7 points, with the return to like the 3 and then the Mike Evans touchdown. And then the 2 late just completely kind of finished the game. The one turned into a touchdown, and then the other one just gave the Bucs a chance to run the clock out. But Tom Brady definitely got the better of the 2 in this game. He threw for 199 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions, and that's exactly kind of what the Bucs needed. Earlier in the year when the Bucs lost, we saw Brady turning the ball over more, and that was really the turning point in the games. But the Bucs forcing Breeze to throw some pretty questionable interceptions was the big difference maker. They really couldn't get Kamara doing too much. He had 18 carries for 85 yards, which isn't terrible, but no touchdowns. He didn't really do, like I said, too much. And then the Bucs defense, like we've said previously on the show, they played so well. Like I said, with the forced turnovers and all that, and really every time they needed a stop, they got one. It was cool to see the Saints let Jameis go in there and throw for a touchdown against his old team. But once that happened, if you were watching the game, I really thought the Saints were going to take control again and kind of roll the Bucs like they did the last 2 times. But then here, it was different. The Bucs really turned around from that, didn't allow too much more out of the Saints, and ended up getting a win. And like you said, it's just too hard beating Tom Brady 3 times in the year and your 3rd time playing in the postseason. That's just way too hard. So I just didn't see it happening, and the Bucs ended up coming out on top.
Yeah, man, I think, literally the Saints were the more talented team overall, still are. They play without Taysom Hill, so that hurt. But, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, last week, you just can't bet against Tom Brady 3 times in a season. It's just doesn't make sense, and he's just liable to do what he needs to do to win. And he didn't necessarily play incredible, but he did everything that needed to be done. Like you said, didn't turn the ball over and fixed all the mistakes from the last couple of games and took advantage of what they needed to win. But the Bucs defense was the savior for them. Honestly, like all season long, they've been getting torched, and they play all first, second, at the most, really like 3rd-year DBs. Devin White's a 2nd-year linebacker, but he's a big time player, a dog, and they have really good pass rushers up front, and they play solid run D. So, if they eliminated the mistakes, which they did against New Orleans, you have opportunity to take advantage of plays. They played a lot of man coverage and really left no windows for Drew Brees to make throws. And, all season long, he's been dumping the ball short because he had the injuries. It comes out today that he had a torn labrum. Obviously, everyone knew about the ribs and the lung. Then he had, foot problems with the torn fascia, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. Like people don't even really understand what that is, but it can really disrupt, just how you are. And obviously we saw he couldn't put a lot of strength into his throws. So you combine, being 41 years old, torn labrum, you don't know if it was in his throwing shoulder or not, but I mean, either way, and then not being able to push off your lead foot. I mean, all of that was kind of clear in how he played. And it sucks that that's the way, it seems like a legend is going out, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. The Bucs took advantage of opportunities, when they needed to, and they were able to get it done.
So now for our predictions, for the conference championship, the first game, the Bucs versus the Packers. I'm gonna go with the Bucs. This was tough. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's just different right now, and the way he's playing is insane. But I just can't pick against Brady in the playoffs. And also the Packers' last big loss was against the Bucs when the Bucs, killed them. So I just don't see Tom Brady losing. But then again, a lot of people don't even see Aaron Rodgers losing. So I think this will be one of the best games of all of the playoffs. I'm really hoping it's a close game and we can get a really close ending, because I think both of these teams are, as they've proven, the two best right now, the two best teams in the NFC as a whole. But if Aaron Rodgers can, limit turnovers, hook up with Devontae Adams, which is very capable, and they can get Aaron Jones involved, I think the Packers will end up winning. But I just think the Bucs offense will outscore more points than the Packers will, just because the Packers defense, I think, is a little bit worse than the Bucs. We've seen two different defenses out of both teams all year, which is pretty crazy. But overall, like I said, Tom Brady's clicking right now. He's playing good football. And, he's a vet, just like Aaron Rodgers is, but he's a big time vet, and he's been here a ton of times. So I think his experience will push them past the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, man, I think this game is like a who I want to win versus who I think is actually going to win, which I'm pretty sure I said last week with the Ravens and Bills game. But the storyline of if Tampa goes to the Super Bowl and then it's Tom Brady left Bill Belichick, and he leads the Bucs, who have been so bad for so long, and I think they have the worst winning percentage historically of all professional sports teams in America. Like, that's insane. But if he's able to bring them to a Super Bowl in Tampa, and he's obviously Tom Brady, you expect him to close that out when he gets there. That just be so really just cool to think about. But I think the Packers are too good. I think especially coming off of having lost to them the way they did, and this time and now being in Lambeau, which Aaron Rodgers has asked for all year long. He's basically been saying, like, look, if I get set up with that opportunity the same way guys like Tom got set up with all those AFC championships in Foxborough, like, I can't lose. And I just don't see them losing. As opportunistic as that young secondary was for Tampa against New Orleans and against Green Bay the first time, I don't think it's going to happen again. I think it'll probably be the opposite, and they'll be able to exploit those matchups. People don't have two bad games against a team in a row very often, and definitely not, guys like Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, who are basically number one at their positions for this year, maybe by a wide margin, just the way they've played. And their offense as a whole has just been unstoppable. So I think the Packers will be able to get it done, and we'll be pushing for a Super Bowl bid.
So now for our final game, the Bills versus Chiefs, I'm going with the Bills. This is definitely a big upset if it happens, but I think the Bills are really hot right now, and so are the Chiefs. But we're gonna have to see if that Bills pass defense can stop the Chiefs. That's going to be the big story. And coming off of the Ravens game and the Colts game, it really won't seem like they'll be able to stop them, because Hollywood Brown had Tre'Davious White on him the whole game, or most of the game, and was getting open with ease. So if they can't stop Hollywood Brown, then it'll be tough for them to stop guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, all those guys. But I'm going to go with the Bills because I think the Bills offense will produce a ton of points against the Chiefs defense. And the Chiefs really have not impressed me lately. They beat the Browns easily, but that was a game for them that was no surprise. Um, Although when Mahomes did go down, I think it raised the eyebrows of a lot of people because the game was getting a lot closer. But like I said before, Mahomes stayed in. I don't think it would have been that close of a game. But if Mahomes doesn't play, which there's a very, very small chance of, I don't think it's a question if the Bills win or not. But we're expecting to see Mahomes playing. And another big thing for the Chiefs, they'll have Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, I believe. So if they get him back, that run game will change a lot. Like I said before, I don't know what's going on with Le'Veon Bell, if he's hurt or if they're just not using him. I'm really not too sure. But like I said before, I just think Josh Allen and the Bills are playing really good football right now. And I just don't see anybody being able to stop that passing game with Stephon Diggs. So if the Bills can really turn it up on defense like they did against the Ravens, then they'll end up winning that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this is prefaced with if Patrick Mahomes plays. But to me, when I watched the hit, I didn't see anywhere where he could have been concussed. I didn't see any. There was no helmet-to-helmet contact. There was hardly any helmet-to-ground contact. A lot of people talked about maybe he got choked out and just momentarily lost consciousness, which he might have. And then obviously you see him wobble and all that stuff. So it scares people. And he's a $500 million man, so he probably scared the doctors. And they, at the time they had you would think is a comfortable lead. So they might have erred on the side of caution and diagnosed him with a concussion when it might not necessarily have been that serious, which is what Andy Reid kind of made it seem like. And I see him practicing today, doing full reps with everyone else. So it seems like he'll be fine. So with that being said, I'm taking the Chiefs. I think the Bills, as dynamic as their offense has been, guys like Honey Badger and really just that whole Chiefs defense has been opportunistic, and that's what's made them be so successful the last 2 years pairing with that offense. I think either he makes a play that changes the game for him on defense, or Frank Clark is there to make plays, and so is Chris Jones. I think those guys will have a heavy impact on the game when they're on defense. But as good as the defense or the Bills defense has been at times, and they were last week against a one-dimensional Ravens team, they're not going to be able to do that against Kansas City. They're not stopping Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Sammy Watkins didn't play last week. I assume he'll be back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back. They're not stopping all of those guys, if any of them at all. So Kansas City should win that one and be heading to the Super Bowl.
So now that is it for this episode. Today was a quicker episode because we really don't have too many games. But next week we'll be back talking about the conference championship and the Super Bowl. But I really appreciate you guys watching this. And like I said, we'll have guests coming on sometime soon. Still reaching out. We're still reaching out to guys. So hopefully sometime soon we'll be bringing some guests on and some stuff like that. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching.
Yep, thanks for tuning in.